everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So on today's video we are going to be continuing our elemental series and we are going to be talking all about the earth element. So probably one of the most popular elements to work with, along with the fire element, the earth element is really well known for being great for grounding. A lot of people focus on the earth element for connecting with its energy, really grounding yourself in your energy. But there's a lot more that the earth element can do for us, and there's a lot more that actually represents it that maybe you don't yet work with in your magical practice. So in this video, I want to go over some correspondences that relate to the earth element and some of the different techniques that you can use to work with it to really help expand your elemental magical practice. So let's start with the basics. Colours. Now, as with all of the other elements, the colours for the earth element are rather stereotypical. They are brown in most shades, black and grey, and also green in almost all shades. So if anything, I feel kind of fitting today. I've got a lot of green going on. I really match the earth element right now. So these colours are really great to work with in candle magic, in sachet magic, in anything that you're doing. You can tie the colour of that element into the working if you do want to connect with elementals, elemental spirits, or the elemental energy in general. Now next are zodiacs. Now, as I've said in all of the other elemental videos, it's important to note that you don't have to belong to a very specific zodiac sign in order to work with the element, not at all. Those that do belong to these specific zodiac signs might find it easier to connect with an element, but you definitely don't have to be one of these zodiac signs in order to work with it. So the zodiac signs for the earth element are Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. Now, when it comes to working with these signs, you can do it in a multitude of different ways. A lot of people will choose to work with these zodiac signs as the sun aspect. So the sun spends approximately a month and a bit in every single one of the astrological signs. So that's why if you are born in September, you might be a Virgo. And so often people will work with these blocks of time and connect with the earth element or the other elemental energies as we pass through the signs. So for instance, in September, you might want to work with the earth element as we're in Virgo. If you are in July, for instance, you might want to work with the water element because you are in the water element of Cancer. So people do work with it as the sun sign, but you can do it as different planets enter each house. So the moon also enters these astrological signs and it spends about 3 or 4 days in each sign, and you can plot these out. So if you know that you want to do a cleansing working in an earth sign, you could, for instance, look up the new moon when it enters Taurus, and you can specifically plan to do a working in that time period. It adds an extra level of astrological association onto that working, which some people do believe can really boost its energy. There are some practitioners that work almost solely within the astrological periods to really power up their workings and to make them really, really strong. Is this a requirement? No, but it is a really good way to add an extra boost of energy into your workings if you feel as though you need to. So next are planets. Now, when it comes to the earth element, the primary planet is, of course, the Earth. It's kind of in the name, but there is another as well, and that is Saturn. Now, not everyone chooses to work with the planet of Saturn when it comes to the earth element. A lot of people will just stick to, well, Earth, but it is another option out there if you do want to reach beyond the planet that we reside on. But you can also work with comets as well, that's another one. Generally, any physical body that is in space, you can connect with for the purpose of the earth element. So comets are pretty good for this because it's usually debris, whether that is rock debris or another form of debris. It's not simply a gas. So a lot of people will choose to work with meteors as well because it does give that kind of earthly body of a physical object in space. So, crystals. Now, a lot of people will argue that all crystals are earth element crystals because almost all crystals come from the earth, and that is certainly true, as is with the rest of the elements though. Everything on earth consists of all elements, at least at some point in its history, and so you can, yes, work with almost any crystal for the earth element, but there are some that really connect with the earth element more than others. Those are mainly those that have weight and also those that have texture that relates to the earth element. So things like hematite are often used to work with the earth element because it's very heavy, it's very metallic based, and because of that it's really, really good for connecting with that grounding energy. A little snippet of information here, but if you're anything like me and you have a tendency to energetically float off when you're around a lot of random energies, if you carry around or wear hematite, it's a grounding crystal and can really help keep your energy grounded. So hematite is really good for working with the earth element, as well as green moss agate, and actually most agates, malachite, bloodstone, and quartz. Quartz is really wonderful because you can really program it to do anything and to be anything. And when it comes to resonating with earth energy, you can really program that quartz to resonate with it. So you can essentially have a quartz for almost every single element if you wanted to, or you can pick a stone that works best for you. Now, some people will also use stones such as marble or granite. They aren't so much crystals, but they are stones that hold a lot of significance and a lot of power. And if you live in the UK or you are connected with Stonehenge, some people will also use Preseli bluestone to connect with the earth element and the earth energy. I have a piece of this myself and I absolutely love it for working with the earth element. It's actually probably one of my go-to crystals when I do want to work with the earth element. Metals. As I mentioned with the other elements, you can really work with metals when it comes to the elements for lots of different things. If you are particularly gifted at smithing or jewelry making, you can make your own pieces out of metal if you want to, or you can do as I do and charm and enchant jewelry. Now, the metals for the earth element can really be essentially anything, but the two that people really choose to work with frequently are iron and brass. So if you do have any pieces that are made of this, you can charm them and enchant them for your magical purposes. You can wear them if you have any brass jewelry or any iron jewelry. Some people, especially the very traditional folks, will choose to wear iron jewelry. It's something that I've seen a lot of pagans and a lot of practitioners do. Often they'll make it themselves, which is really, really cool. But if you have any little bits of trinkets lying around, you can always enchant them as well for protection or prosperity or whatever you might need in your life. It's a really good collection of metals to work with when it comes to earth energy. It's just very tactile and very, well, earthy. Let's face it, it's very earthy. I don't know about you, but if I hold anything that's made of brass, there's just something about it that just connects me so firmly with the earth. It's just a really unusual sensation, but it's also really calming as well. So if you've never tried it, try doing some grounding workshops or try doing a grounding technique while holding something that's made of brass or iron. There's really something about it that just grounds you almost instantly. So if you do struggle with your grounding techniques, maybe try holding a piece or have a piece around you that you can really connect with while you're doing it to see if you can improve your situation. Next, we have herbs. Now, just like with crystals, most herbs are connected with the earth element for obvious reasons, but there are some that are more connected than others. When it comes to the earth element, a lot of people will work with roots because they are, well, directly in the earth and in many cases very deeply rooted in the earth. So things like marshmallow root and calamus, galangal and those kind of things are really closely connected with the earth element, as well as trees of almost all forms. Trees are wonderful for connecting with the earth element because of all of the species in the entire world. Trees are one of the most closely connected, the most deeply rooted to the earth itself. Now, alongside roots and trees, you also have mushrooms. Now, mushrooms are found everywhere. You find fungi in almost all areas of the world, in almost all aspects of life, and they are very, very rooted to the earth. It might not seem like it, but they have a foundation of roots that just go around the world. So if you are into mushrooms and mushroom gathering, safely of course, or simply mushroom observing, I know a few folks that really love just going out mushroom spotting. I myself am a very happy mushroom spotter. I go into the woods and I try to find as many different species as I can, and I have a little book with me that I try to figure out what they are, but I'm not very good with mushrooms, and I don't eat them, I promise. But I just like going out and spotting them. There's something about mushrooms, especially and their connection with trees, that is just so earthly and grounding. And so mushrooms are really good for working with the earth energy as well. Now, of course, there are other herbs. You can argue that all herbs are, but there are some that are definitely more connected than others, for lots of different reasons. Patchouli is a really good one. Not only is it closely connected to the earth, but it also smells like dirt. If you've never smelled dried patchouli, you won't know what I mean. But if you have patchouli, I have a big tub of it upstairs, and you open it up, it smells like you've dug your hands in dirt. That's a really weird description, but you know what I mean. If you know, you know. Patchouli smells like dirt. So it's really good for working with the earth element, and it's probably my go-to thing. If I don't have any pieces of wood lying around, I will go for patchouli. There's just something about it. It smells amazing as well, which I can thoroughly appreciate. You also have ivy, grain, rice, vetiver, sage, any moss and lichens because of their association with trees and plants and nature, nuts, apples, bistort, comfrey, cypress, fern, grasses, honeysuckle, magnolia, mugwort, narcissus, oak moss, primrose, vervain, and vetiver. So there's quite a lot in there. I actually had to read that off a list because I would never remember all of those in one go. There's definitely a lot to go on there, but for me anyway, I tend to connect with grains, so things like corn and wheat and oats I go with a lot. Patchouli I use a lot, same with vervain and trees. Although if you do like going out and foraging for yourself, you can always take a small amount of moss or lichen and then use that to represent it. Because when dried, they can keep for a really long time, and you can actually add them into your magical workings. So if you have any dried moss, you can add it into spell bottles, witches' balls, whatever it is that you fancy, to connect that earth element and the earthly energy into that working if it associates with what the earth element represents. That's a really good way of doing it. It's physically adding the element into a working. You don't just have to do that with moss and lichen, you really can do that with any of the things in this list as long as they are dried. You can make your own oils with the herbs, you can dress candles with them and load candles with them as long as it's safe to do so. You can add them into bath water, you can really do a lot with them. Just make sure that all of the things that you're going to be adding in are safe to do so, but you can really go crazy with these. You can make your own incenses, you can make your own oils, you can add them into spell work, you can give them as offerings. Herbs are such a wonderful tactile thing to use, especially with the earth element. So next we have animals. Now once again, you can argue that all animals essentially are connected with the earth element, but there are some that are far more connected than others. So anything that burrows is considered particularly associated with the earth element. So that goes for things like voles and moles, and also things like groundhogs, although I would love to see a groundhog. I never have because I live in England and they don't live around here, but they're so sweet. And things like gophers. Are gophers the same thing as groundhogs? I don't know, let me know. The things that bury themselves in the ground are particularly connected with the earth element, as well as things such as livestock. So cows and sheep and chickens and ducks and all of those kind of things are very closely connected to the earth element. You also have insects that relate to underground, so things like termites and ants. Worms are another popular one as well. And then you also have dogs. And finally, bones. Almost all forms of bones are very closely connected with the earth element. It is everything that's closely connected to the earth that do decompose flesh off bones and leave behind just pristine bones, and because of that, bones are often very closely connected with the earth element. They are almost a gift from the earth that we can then work with in our practice, but please, if you're going to use bones in your practice, be aware that you need to do so respectfully for the animal that they came from. You never know whose spirit might be attached to them, so please always take care to use bones very carefully within your magical practice. So moving on to spirits. Now, there are quite a few spirits that are connected with the earth element, and a lot of them you will likely have heard of. A lot of them I've spoken about in previous videos because you know me, I love me a good brownie, and I don't mean the delicious chocolatey sweet, I mean the sweet little fey spirit known as brownies. So brownies are particularly connected to the earth element, so are their counterparts boggarts. You also have hobgoblins, trolls, gnomes, dwarves, and leprechauns. So there's definitely a lot in there, and a lot of them are considered to be nature-based fae. They're often indoor fae in many cases, or a lot of them are also found outside in many European countries and other locations around the world, but you guys know me. My favourite is the little brownie. I have a soft spot for brownies. I used to live with brownies in the house. There's still brownies almost everywhere, and they're so sweet and they're so nice and they're ever so wonderful to have around. So I do have a soft spot for brownies. They're probably one of my favourite spiritual beings. So that's like my favourite thing on this list so far. So now we're on to the properties. Now the magical properties of the earth element kind of vary quite drastically, and it's because the earth both gives and takes away. It stabilizes us, but it also allows us to move forward. And because of that, it has a lot of different associations. So the first is probably the most well known. It's really good for grounding. Now, it's important to remember that you don't have to be associated with the earth or touching the ground in order to ground. Although that is an easier way of doing it for a lot of people, you don't have to. But if you do want to do that, doing a lovely earth grounding, lying yourself out on the dirt, is a really, really great way of doing it. But the earth isn't just connected with grounding, it's also connected to stability, inner strength and balance and significance. It's also connected with fertility, health, nurturing, wisdom, abundance. Almost everything that we can draw from the earth is in its associations. So the earth element can really be used to work with a lot more than just grounding. I see a lot of people talking about grounding being the be-all and end-all of the earth element, and it really isn't. Spread your roots. I was going to say wings, that wouldn't apply. Spread your roots and reach out and try other things with the earth element, because really it is such a wonderful nurturing element. It is so versatile that it really is worth reaching out and seeing if you can find something else to use the earth element with. So even if that could be prosperity, abundance, health, knowledge, wisdom, studies. It could be success workings where you're finding your feet and you're moving forwards. There's so many different things that you can work the earth element with. So what kind of things can you actually do for the earth element? A lot of people don't really know some techniques, so I'm just going to give you a few in this video. There's honestly so many things that you can do. So the first is grounding in nature. Spending time in nature, spending time with the earth element is a wonderful way to connect with our inner energies and also the energy of the earth. I often find that people feel more themselves when they've spent time out in nature. It's almost our natural state to be among nature, and a lot of the time we repress that when we live in cities, in giant housing blocks. If we never end up going outside and touching the earth and touching trees and being around them, we kind of lose something spiritually. So if you are struggling and if you are in a bit of a rut, as I know some of you are, then it can be really good when it's safe to do so that you go and spend time in nature. Even if it's just going outside and spending a little bit of time in your back garden if you are lucky to have one, or when it's safe to do so after all of this has died down a little bit, being able to go outside and just spend a little bit of time in nature. It's a really great way to connect with that energy again, to really center ourselves and understand our place in the energetic world that we kind of lose if we're just inside all of the time. Now, another thing that you can do when it comes to the earth element is work with different dirt. Now, dirt is used in a lot of different cultures. You often find that graveyard dirt is used quite a lot, but other areas are considered to be significant too. So dirt from a hospital is often used for healing. Dirt from a bank is often used for prosperity workings. You can use dirt as tag locks if you wanted to. If you know that you want to do a spell on a particular location, you can use a little bit of that dirt in the working to help connect it to that location. Even if that dirt is no longer in the vicinity of that location anymore, it still holds a part of it, whether that be in the vegetation and the bacteria it contains, or the energy that it continues to possess. So we can then use that dirt collected from a specific location in our spell work and rituals to represent that particular area in our working. Now, we don't just have to carry the dirt away with us, we can actually bury things in the earth. Now, different traditions have different beliefs on this. Some people will bury remains of candles and spell work in dirt in order to dispose of them. Other people will bury them in the earth to continue the working on. So typically it's believed that if you bury spell work remains in the front of a property, it is to attract things in. So if you did a candle spell, for instance, to attract a new lover, you might want to bury that in the front of the property to continue to attract things in. If you wanted to keep something around, you often bury it in the back garden, as it's a way of keeping it in your property and in your space. If you wanted to get rid of it completely and you wanted to put it to rest, you might choose to bury things in graveyards. If you wanted to bring prosperity to a working, you might want to bury it somewhere where money is held, like a bank or a business. If you wanted to bring prosperity into your business, you own a business. If you have a potted plant in your business, you can bury the remains of that prosperity working in the potted plant and keep it in the business. There's so many different ways of doing this. Just please make sure that what you are burying is safe to do so. If you're using paraffin candles, it's best not to bury them as they are made of plastic, which is not good for the environment, and also anything that roots that up and eats it is going to get really, really sick. So please only do this with degrading items that are non-toxic. So soy wax is okay, beeswax is okay for candle magic. If you're doing it with herbs, make sure it's nothing poisonous, please always be careful. You never know what's going to eat what you're burying. But that is one way that you can use dirt and earth in your magical practice. Now, a lot of people may set up altars that work with the elements. That might be one altar that represents all of the elements, or just an earth element altar. Now, these altars might have plants on them that you keep alive and that you grow, and it's a really nice calming space. You might also choose to keep a pentacle on that altar, as that is the symbol of the earth element. The cloth might be green, you might be burning some earth element incense, you might have a green candle burning with some earth element dressing oil added onto it that was made from the earth element herbs. You might have earth element crystals on there, and you might also be working with symbols. So the symbol for the earth element is this. Now, you can use this in petitions that you can then bury in specific locations to degrade them whilst also manifesting your desired outcome. So if you know that you want to protect your property, you might make a protection sigil and then bury it on your property. The natural processes of the earth will break down that sigil, and in its destruction, you will energize it. And then it will protect the land that it is on. So that's one way of using these kind of symbols. You can also carve them into candles. If you want to work with elements, a lot of the time people will use specific coloured candles for different elements. Red for fire, blue for water, and green for earth, as well as yellow for air. And they may choose to carve these alchemical symbols into those candles to represent the elements. You can also just have that on an altar and work with it that way. Now, on altars like this, you can also work with the animal symbolism. Now, you don't necessarily need to have the animals around, you can just have a figure of them. A drawing, a little picture, a photograph, a little kid's toy on an altar to represent that animal. It's a really great way of doing it, especially if you work with things like animal oracle cards or animal spirit cards. It's a great way of working with animals as well as working with elements. Now, with all of this, you can choose, if you want to work with elemental spirits. Now, it's always important that if you're going to be working with spirits in any way, please always give them what you have promised them. Fae and other spirits always deserve something in return, and if you have agreed that you are going to give an elemental spirit, a fairy, or another kind of spirit something in return for a working or assistance, please make sure you always do this. It is only fair. It's essentially a fair wage for that particular spirit, so please make sure you always do this. But if you are interested in working with spirit work, you can also do this with elementals and element spirits as well. So it's a good option for any of you out there that don't necessarily work with physical items and you more work with spirits. That is an option too. Now, if you do want to do some cleansing, but want to work with the earth element in your cleansing, you can also work with rock salt. Now, rock salt is really good for cleansing. It's a passive cleanser rather than an active cleanser. So something like smoke cleansing is an active cleanser because you are burning something and you are walking around and you are actively undertaking the process of cleansing. Whereas if you are going to cleanse with the earth element, you don't necessarily have to. So you can simply put a dish of salt on a windowsill. I typically choose a windowsill closest to the door, mainly because that's where a lot of the energy comes in and out. And then every month, 2 months, I will take that salt and I will dissolve it and I will wash it away. Please never bury salt. Please never sprinkle salt on the ground. You will kill the earth. And also it's really harmful for any animals that get to it, because a lot of animals will keep licking and eating salt and they don't realize they're taking in too much until it's too late. So it's always important to dispose of your salt safely. But it is a really good passive cleanser if you aren't in a position where you can have a lot of smoke, or you aren't mobile enough to fully smoke cleanse your property. You can have a small dish, it doesn't need to be a lot, of salt in every single room to really help you with this, so you don't have to walk around the entire house with a giant sage stick. So if you don't want to use any items at all, you can simply use visualization with everything I've mentioned so far. The idea being that you can visualize the color green, you can visualize the animals that are associated with it, the herbs, the crystals, the scents, the smells. You can really add it all into your visualization and your mental workings when you're doing mental energy work. And that way you can add all of these associations in without necessarily having to have physical items, which is a really great option for anyone that maybe can't have items. If you haven't told anyone that you are a practitioner and you still want to work with the element, that is a really great way of doing it. And then lastly is the idea of grounding and drawing energy from the earth. You can really draw energy from everyone and everything if you wanted to. But a lot of people really like drawing energy from the earth because it is a neutral source of energy. I have a full technique on this channel that I will link up here for grounding with the earth if that's something that you would like to try for yourself. It stops you from feeling kind of strange after working because you've used all of your personal energy. And then once you're done, you return any excess energy back to earth. That way you don't feel kind of weird after working, and instead you can just feel calm and you know that you're being fueled by really nice neutral energy that you can then return again, so you're not under-energized or over-energized in any of your workings. So I hope that this was useful. I hope it helped anyone that was really interested in working with the earth element in their practices. Now, if you do want to see any of the other ones in this series, I will link it down in the description box if you do want to check out the others, and they'll also be on my channel as well. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to give it a like. It really means so much to me. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, video ideas, or just want to chit chat with the community down in the comment section, feel free to post a comment. There's always chatting going on down there. I also have a Discord server that's linked in the description box if you do want to go and chat with anyone else in the community long after these videos have been posted. Feel free to do that. It's a really active community with lots of amazing people on it. And if you did enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I do try my best to post magical content every Wednesday and every Saturday at 6 p.m. And a massive thank you to all of my amazing supporters on Patreon. You guys are absolutely fantastic. Your names will be on the end screen card, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of your support. It really means so much to me. So thank you so much. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope you have a marvelous magical day, and I will see you all, hopefully, in the next video.